Welcome in, Braves Today, bravestoday.com. I'm Ben Taylor. He's Lindsay Crosby, and we want to remind everybody to go to plainscoffee.com, and then that way you can pick up your Plains Coffee by entering the promo code BRAVES, get your 10% off. Lindsay, they finally won a series. I say finally, like it's basically been 6 months since they've done so. It was against the A's. I know people say, it's the A's. However, you and I have talked about that. This was last year, kind of a little bit of payback, getting swept by the A's over on the West Coast after Sunday Night Baseball. But the two things that I took from it were Charlie Morton finally looked like the Charlie Morton that I wanted to see this year. Bats came alive a little bit. And Chris Sale finally had his quote-unquote bad game that we said was going to happen at some point. Everybody needed to prepare for it. So those are my three takeaways from the A's. Yeah, exactly. So those were my three takeaways from the weekend.
Yeah, Charlie Morton first, I guess. I was for a tough game, right? With the weather and everything, coming off of the disaster that he had in the previous outing, I was really impressed. 6 scoreless innings, 1 hit allowed. Right. And he only had 3 walks until the rain really started to set in late. So like he's tagged with, I think 5 walks in the outing, but it's hard to blame him for those last 2 because it was raining pretty good. And I was excited to see this because Charlie Morton's ERA in the month of May was over 5. And you've had a lot of success from Ronald Lopez and Chris Sale. And we've talked before about you had workload questions with those guys, given their previous seasons, previous histories. And so you needed to make sure that like you didn't, the question here was, are you going to have to go out and get multiple starters? Because if it was 40-year-old 5 ERA Morton, and then 2 guys with workload concerns, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If Charlie Morton is back to above average number 4 starter, number 3 in a bunch of other teams, I think you're fine. And you don't have to necessarily worry as much about getting multiple starters at the deadline in that situation. So felt good about Morton. And then the offense, like you said, you scored a bunch of runs on Saturday. You still lost that game, but you scored a bunch of runs on Saturday. And one of the big takeaways for me, yes, we know that Marcell Ozuna has been good consistently. But like Matt Olson feels like he's kind of coming back around. I pulled the numbers here from if I can get this to work right, from the end of the Mets series. So that was like mid-May through now. Matt Olson's batting .317 with a .582 slug. It's a .950 OPS.
Yes.
5 homers, 11 extra base hits, and 87 plate appearances. Matt Olson is back. And this is kind of what we've been talking about. These guys crush the ball. They hit the ball hard. The luck is eventually going to turn. That's been good luck last year, bad luck this year. It looks like Matt Olson's luck has started to turn. Now we have to get Austin Riley going. And some of these other, Sean Murphy going, Ozzie Albies going.
And we need to get Major League Baseball to put the regular balls back into play after the All-Star break because there's still warning track power out of everybody, and the exit velocity as well as the launch angle. These are balls that would have been gone last year, in my opinion. I don't have the studies and the facts, but it's now becoming just obvious when you watch Major League Baseball, even watching Sunday Night Baseball with the Phillies and the Cardinals. There were a few warning track shots that guys have got 106, 107, 109 exit velo, and it's coming up short in the shortest part of the ballpark. So it's not like they're taking it to the deepest part and it's coming up short. They're hitting them down the left field line, down the right field line, and they're not getting out. So I still swear by that. There's still no facts, no figures. I still think the balls are soft. I think Major League Baseball is going to wake up and re-implement the regular balls in the second half of the season, and we're going to see some different numbers out of every club, not just the Atlanta club. Now, you mentioned Sale, and he said, hey, I'm due to have a bad one every now and then. However, he was pitcher of the month in the month of May, for very good reason. When you look at his numbers, he just didn't start off June the greatest that he possibly could.
Named on Monday morning 5-0 with an 0.56 ERA in the month of May. He was pitcher of the month for the National League. 32 innings, 2 earned runs, 2 walks allowed versus, what was it? It was 45 strikeouts, like absurd numbers. Now, he allowed 4 times as many runs in that one start on Saturday. He just saved the ball for June, but like it was huge for Atlanta because the Braves were like 13 and 14 in the month, but games that Fried and Sale started, they were 8-2. And so if Chris Sale doesn't have the month that he has, if Max Fried doesn't have the month that he has, Atlanta could have possibly won less than 10 games in the month. But Chris Sale was practically untouchable. And he had a 21 inning scoreless streak in the month of May, 7th longest streak in MLB this year. And his streak of 7 straight wins, which started in like mid-April, was the longest for the Braves since 2003.
Oh, wow.
Like, I don't think people realize how good of a year or a good of a month or 6 weeks Chris Sale really had. Like the list of guys who have had a longer winning streak than Chris Sale's 7 straight, going back to the turn of the century, is Russ Ortiz in 2003, Greg Maddux in 2001, and that's it. End of list.
Wow.
So amazing stretch for Chris Sale. He's probably not going to keep that up, as you saw the first start in June, but he's going to be, he looks like he's as close to that classic White Sox Chris Sale form as we've seen since he was traded to Boston.
He's one of the, he is a pitcher that I've said before. Somebody was asking me, they said, what do you think about Chris Sale? And I said, he's what I call a matchup pitcher. Is when he finds a lineup that he matches up well against, he absolutely dominates them. There is nothing that, and it can be guys that may have a lot of success against everybody else, but they didn't have success in the past against Chris Sale. And it's almost like it's a mental thing because you and I have talked about it. His arm angle when he comes in, I mean, how long and lanky he is. And just some guys, if the right matchup happens with him, he's going to have those 5-0 months. He's going to have those, but then again, when the matchups don't work well, like it did against the A's, he's going to just give off, a ball that's hit deep, skirts out, maybe a little bleeder here, bleeder there. Next thing you know, a couple of runs come in, and there's some guys that have had some success against him on the A's team. Now, before we get to the Red Sox, do want to thank the fine folks at Plains Coffee. Go to plainscoffee.com, get your coffee, get your tea, get your flavored coffee if that's what you want, or you can even put some creamer in it like Lindsay does. Now, they're not going to sell you that, but they will sell you the coffee to go with the creamer. Go to plainscoffee.com, promo code BRAVES, get your 10% off. So now that momentum after a series win takes them into a long road stretch, it looks like. I mean, and it's going to be up and down the East Coast. So the good news is they're not flipping time zones or anything. But you got Boston, you got Washington, you got Baltimore. And we start with Boston, and pretty much some familiar territory, just in a different park, is they'll be facing the same 2 pitchers that they faced the first time around.
Yeah, game 1 is Max Fried versus Cutter Crawford at 7:10. Game 2 on Wednesday is Spencer Schwellenbach, the prospect. We'll talk about him in a second. Versus Nick Pivetta. That is an afternoon. I think it's a 1:35 game. And both of these guys started the 2 games for Boston in Truist Park in your sweep. Crawford wasn't bad. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. He got by Jared Kelenic for a first inning home run. I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that homer.
I did too.
And then Nick Pivetta struggled. 4 innings, 7 hits, 5 runs. He gave up 3 homers, including 2 to Marcell Ozuna and 1 to Orlando Arcia. And for Ozuna to be a dude that likes to pull it down the line and launch it into left, getting the monster, since he's a guy that gets good height on his balls, I feel like this is a pretty good matchup for him to pick up some more homers here off a guy that he's hit very well. So excited about that. The Braves have Fried on Tuesday, who was co-pitcher of the month on the team's award over the weekend, and Spencer Schwellenbach on Wednesday, who really good start his first time out and has done a lot to kind of answer some of the questions about the 5th starter role between him, what Hurston Waldrop has done, and then the thought of getting Ian Anderson and AJ Smith-Shawver back second half of the year.
Well, and you and I talked about it at the first part of the season, as far as the pods are concerned, about would we see any of these guys throughout the year? Are we seeing them sooner than we thought we would just because of the Strider injury, as well as, and not just that, not only are we seeing them sooner, Waldrop making his way up now in AAA Gwinnett, so we may see that arm in the majors before it's all said and done with. Would we do that possibly before the All-Star break? I don't know. There are a couple of open spots coming up in the next coming weeks. But your assessment thus far of what you saw of Schwellenbach as well as Waldrop at AAA, he got a chance to throw over the weekend as well.
Yeah, so Waldrop first. Not his first AAA start. A lot of people got that wrong. He made one start there last year at the very end of the year. But most strikeouts he's had in any start. He had 11 punchies in that. The things that we talked about he needed to fix were better. We talked about his control was an issue, and like to that, college last year, 5 walks per 9 innings. Minor leagues last year, 4.9 walks per 9 innings. This year, 3.1 walks per 9 innings. So almost 2 walks per 9 innings better than he was, through 71% strikes against Norfolk. Got a bunch of whiffs, 22 swings and misses, right? Wow. Absurd number. Almost 40% of his pitches were either a whiff or a called strike, which is nuts. The MLB average is like 29%. He was at 37% against a pretty good, like Norfolk is one of the better AAA lineups. It's Baltimore. So one of the better AAA lineups in all of baseball. Loaded. So was really impressed by that. You can tell Atlanta did the thing they always do with their prospects. We want you to kind of stop throwing your curveball for a little bit, throw your slider a lot more. Let's get that better, and we'll bring the curveball back. So threw a lot of sliders. The splitter is still a weapon. The fastball is good enough. I do think it's probably the weak link out of the 3 or 4. I talked about this a little bit on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball, the shape isn't necessarily ideal from Waldrop's fastball. It doesn't have enough backspin like a usual fastball that you'd elevate up in the zone, but it doesn't have enough like horizontal movement to be a true cutter. It's kind of in the middle there.
Yeah.
I do think Atlanta eventually either has him lean one way or the other on that, or maybe gives him a sinker to kind of help offset the weaknesses of the shape of the fastball. But it's a really good arsenal. He's been able to go pretty deep into games after those first 2 blowups that he had in Double-A to start the year. He's been amazing, right? His ERA's been under 2. I think you see him probably within the next month. My semi-educated opinion would be the first time you see Spencer Schwellenbach stumble and Atlanta needs to try somebody else in that 5th spot, I think it's going to be Waldrop.
Oh, okay. Well, speaking of Schwellenbach, I thought he held his own this past series against the Oakland A's. And I mean, are we planning on seeing a rookie do that night in and night out throughout the season? No, I don't. But I still, to make your debut, and I know it's just the A's, but still, you're asking him to come up and throw it. They're still major league hitters, by the way, Lindsay. I mean, that's what, as somebody put on Twitter, he's still facing a major league ball club, and you make one mistake, and even the guy that bats 9th in the lineup can make a small mistake turn into a 400-foot mistake really quickly. So, your take on what he did this past weekend for the Braves?
Yeah, it's remarkable to see a guy who's pitched a grand total of 13 innings out of like above the low minors come in and look as good as he did. I do think that, his poise, really, really good. He's not rattled out there. He's really athletic. I do think there's still a little bit of work to do on getting him acclimated to the majors and maybe how major league hitters are different than minor league hitters, right? It's a huge jump from AAA to the bigs, or in his case, AA to the bigs.
Yeah.
But he was better than I thought he would be, right? The fastball looked good, looked not just good, competitive, like he can lean on that pitch in the major leagues. The velocity was good. He's going to have workload issues simply because, he was a reliever in college. He had a year off for Tommy John and spent the entire year last year in the low minors. But I do think between him, between Waldrop, and then getting Smith Shawver and Ian Anderson back in the back end, I think you can mix and match those guys to have a reliable 5th starter every day. And I wasn't sure going into the Schwellenbach start that he would be good enough to get more starts and to stick at the major league level. And it's nothing against him. I think he's a great pitcher. Yeah. I had him pegged as the breakout prospect for the team this year. I just thought that the lack of upper level experience would hurt him, and it didn't really hurt him. And so, impressed with how well he did. I honestly think that I'm glad he's getting another shot on the road too. I want to see how he handles that from a mindset perspective. But everything we've seen, his poise, his demeanor, he should be fine. I'm excited about the fact that he's going to be your guy in the 5th spot for the foreseeable future. And then again, if he has a stumble or you need an extra starter, Waldrop's probably your next call there.
Okay, with that said, and having those two possible arms, as well as you got Vines down there, you got a couple other guys that we've seen throughout the year. When we come upon a trade deadline, is pitching still going to be something they look for? Is that going to be something that, if it falls in Atlanta's lap, they may take a chance on a pitcher, but they may be looking at something else trade-wise?
I think that your focus is going to be a corner outfielder. You can. Would I be shocked if they get a pitcher? No, I wouldn't. And that may be a package thing. Like, this is all speculation, but like corner outfitter Tommy Pham from the White Sox. And while you're talking to them, you ask for Eric Fetty, the starter, and you get him as well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. But I do think that Waldrop's great start over the weekend, Schwellenbach's good debut last week means that now you can focus on corner outfield versus having to go out and get a starter. Your depth is still a little questionable. I don't think they trust Vines or Winans to be the guy every 5th day. I don't even like Dylan Dodd pitched in relief of Waldrop on Saturday. Sunday. I really don't think that they even want to call him up for a major league start this year. So you don't have a ton of options, especially while Smith-Shawver's still hurt and Dean Anderson's still working his way back from Tommy John. But I do think if all 4 of those guys are healthy at the end of the year, that you have options now. You have options who you are comfortable, if you have to, throwing them in a postseason game, maybe with a short leash, but you're comfortable pulling them into a postseason game. And that's not a position I think you were in 2 weeks ago, right? After Smith-Shawver went down, you had Waldrop in AA. Schwellenbach had just hit AA. And I think the thought process was, we don't have a lot of options right now. And these 2 guys have shown you've got more options. If these 2 guys can handle that 5th spot until Smith-Shawver and Anderson are back, I think you're in a decent place at the trade deadline. And if you can get a starter for cheap, you do it. I don't think you have to. Whereas a couple weeks ago, you had to go get somebody.
You mentioned corner outfielder. Is that mainly, are you talking about possibly making Duvall and Kelnick start platooning again, righty versus lefty? Duvall's numbers haven't been great. However, as far as power is concerned, he does have a few home runs as well as a couple of doubles. But other than that, he's batting right at 200 since he's taken over the starting nod.
Yeah, going back to the Padres series, which is not when Ronald was hurt, but going back to the Padres series, he's played every day since the doubleheader on May 20th. And, he's gotten in every game at least. And since then, he has 3 home runs, but he's batting 200. I think the questions about him playing every day at age 35 through the Atlanta Heat as a type 1 diabetic with a medical concern,
right?
Plus just the lack of exposure Jared Kelnick has to lefties this season. Kelnick's been amazing since Ronald went down. He's been really good.
Yeah.
There's questions about what will he do against left-handed pitching, and the fact that corner outfield is the absolute cheapest and easiest thing to find at the deadline, right? I mean, you can get them every year. Look at the 4 guys Atlanta got in 2021.
Yeah.
Nothing of value was given away for those 4 guys, right? 2 of the guys that were traded away were immediately DFA'd, right? You grabbed whoever you could find and it were all worked out. So I'm not going to be shocked if they go and get a corner outfield option. A guy, you have Kelnick can play center. Duvall's played some center. So you don't even have to get a guy that can cover all 3. You really just get a guy has comfort in right field, because Adam Duvall is obviously still acclimating to right field again. And that gives you options as far as if you need to platoon somebody in left, if you want to give one of these guys a day off, because again, they're your only major league caliber starters, and they're going to have to play every single day from now on, unless you want to go to a JP Martinez or a Forrest Wall. So I do think corner outfield's the focus at the deadline. Obviously, you would like to bring in a starter. I still think they will, but it's definitely not urgent, and it's definitely not a priority like it was a couple weeks ago. Things could change, right? I mean, you've got you've got 2 months. Things could change, but as of now, corner outfield looks like it's going to have to be a bigger issue than starting pitching.
Braves in Boston, 2-game series. That is on Tuesday and Wednesday. I have got the sweep, and the only reason being is because my sister lives in Boston, and she is a Braves fan, and she plans on going to both games because her company has decided that they would hook her up and give her free tickets. So I am fully pulling for it because I want them to win while she's in attendance, and she doesn't get to see very many Braves games. We went to a ton growing up as kids, and so she now finally gets to. That's the only time she gets to see the Braves is when they come to Boston or when they go to Baltimore. So she may actually bounce down and go to that one as well. But I will say I'm going to go 2-0, and I think the bats probably come alive, especially in this ballpark.
If we take the sweep and she's at both games, we have to crowdsource to send her to Baltimore for that series too. I've got the sweep. Max Fried pitched really well in Wrigley Field. He said he likes pitching there. He likes the history of the ballpark. Yeah. Fenway's also a super old park. I haven't pulled the numbers, but I feel like he's been pretty decent in the games he's been there. So I like that. And then Pivetta, like we said, struggled last time against Atlanta and against an Atlanta offense that wasn't good in the month of May. Right. He still struggled. And so I've got the sweep as well. Watch it be the other direction because we call the same thing, but I've got the sweep for Atlanta as well.
He's Lindsay Crosby. I'm Ben Taylor. Be sure to go to plainscoffee.com for your coffee. Just enter the promo code BRAVES, 10% off. Lindsay also has tons of articles up. You can go to bravestoday.com and you can get a preview of what's going on as far as Boston is concerned. Lindsay, as always, I greatly appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks, buddy.